what we saw certainly in the early days of Web3 was this kind of flippancy with a lot of projects where they say, well, we've got this great thing, and of course we're going to produce comics, and we'll do an animated series, and we'll do a TV show and a movie. And my response has always been like, well, hang on a second, you've just described 5 years worth of work in a sentence.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the CMO Stories podcast, season 2, episode 38. My name is Yuri Bilast, and I'm your podcast host. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Adam. Adam, how are you?
Very well. Excited to be here, Yuri. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. And I know it's not easy for people that speak English to pronounce my name, but you did it really well. Thank you for that. So guys, if you don't know Adam Martin is a director-producer with a film, TV, news media background who helps take projects from inception to completion, ensuring creative content keeps pumping. Budgets are met and schedules keep rolling. Wow. And together with partner Eben Matthews, you founded Macroverse. And Macroverse is a Web3 entertainment studio that rewards its community, collectors, creators, and collaborators for supporting upcoming blockbuster franchises spanning comics, TV, gaming, animation, movies, and more. Amazing.
Yes.
So Adam, I'm curious when I hear this background, what inspired you to combine Web3 with entertainment and create Macroverse? And feel free to introduce Macroverse to our listeners.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. No, hey, like I said, thank you so much for having me here. It's exciting. It's always exciting to talk about this stuff. Macroverse, like you said, is a Web3 entertainment studio. My background is in traditional film and television. So I've been an assistant director for 25 years almost. And I mean, stuff you would have heard of might be the kind of Transformers franchise, TV recently, a show called Dave, Barry, just finished one called The Sterling Affairs. So a lot of kind of big film and television. And my business partner, Eben Matthews, came from more the illustration, and he had a graphic design business that he ran and an advertising agency. And we became friends and realized that we were both on this track of making content for other people and producing things for other people and not really for ourselves. And we discovered a kind of mutual love of comics and thought, well, why don't we start doing this ourselves again? We both grew up with these things. Let's dive back in. We actually produced, there's a movie called The Boondock Saints that was a huge kind of cult hit of 10, 15 years ago now. And so we produced a comic series based around that movie that led us back into the kind of traditional side of the comics business. And as much as we loved it, we also felt, oh dear God, this is broken on a kind of fundamental level. This is very hard to get noticed. There's lots of gatekeepers. It's you're dealing with these kind of 2,000, 3,000. Then it was little independent distributors that you had to get it. It was just a very convoluted process, I think. And so we saw the kind of wave of digital coming anyway to the comics business. So we started Macroverse originally as a Web2 comics production entity. We were like, look, we can produce this thing, we can find great content, we can make great stuff that we want to do ourselves. We've both, as writers, we've sold scripts and they disappear into a studio archive and they sit on the shelf for as long most of the time, basically. We're like, great, we can do that, but we can produce something. And then when we kind of ran into Web3 a couple of years ago, as a lot of people did, we felt like, wait, introducing collectability to digital comics, this feels like the way of the future. And that got us incredibly excited. That got us to dive into this crazy world of Web3.
Wow. Yeah, it's as a lot of us, we came from Web2, then we find out about Web3, and then we learn about it, and we see, oh, actually, this makes sense. We can do things differently. So for you, how has Web3 technology changed the way you approach storytelling and content creation?
It's interesting. I think for me, it really is two different things. I think there's an enormous component that we like to bring, which is the community aspect of it. And so I think that's the most exciting part of it. So we've been lucky enough to kind of come in and on a couple of existing projects, one called Bushido's, which was a series of these great kind of 8,888 super stylized, really cool kind of PFPs, samurai-inspired PFPs. That great community, great project. Founder was really talented artist and really wanted to do great things with it. And then, but also wanted to tell stories, but didn't quite know how. And I think there is what we saw certainly in the early days of Web3 was this kind of flippancy with a lot of projects where they say, well, we've got this great thing, and of course we're going to produce comics, and we'll do an animated series, and we'll do a TV show and a movie. And my response has always been like, well, hang on a second, you've just described 5 years worth of work in a sentence. So like, just let's be realistic. Like, I know what it takes to do these things. Evan, he and I have directed multiple animated episodes together. Our third co-founder comes from a gaming background, so he knows what it takes to produce games. So I think we brought a level of just understanding of the process and understanding of storytelling to it. And so I think directly how it impacts us is we've all had experience in writers' rooms for television. So you get, 6, 8, 10, 12 people crafting a television series once you know the original thing. And so doing that in a Web3 community, kind of in Discords and on Twitter Spaces, and taking people who a lot of times have creative aspirations and have creative kind of desires and creative talent, but don't know how to focus those in on something. So working in the communities, helping teach them how to tell an effective story, what the components of an effective story are, and then with the right projects. And what we did with Bushido's was basically, it was a community-based voting system. So everyone pitched their ideas. The top 6 then got greenlit into production. And now we have these 6 short comic stories that are fantastic, and just this diverse array of creators and perspectives and stories. And it's just been bringing that kind of grassroots community involvement to storytelling and content creation has been fantastic. And I think the other thing is, though, doing it within guidelines that we, as sometimes as individuals or sometimes as a community, have put in place. So it's like, great, let's define this world, let's define kind of the rails within which we're operating. And now you, the community, go out and go crazy. We're going to plan this other story that goes over here. But you kind of create this world to play in, and it's people get incredibly excited. And as a creator and a writer myself, it's incredibly exciting to see people engaging and writing and producing, and the conversations that come from that. And it's just immensely satisfying. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned the third co-founder who came from gaming. Now, when I read your company name, Macroverse, and we talk about Web3, it makes me think about metaverse. Is there somewhere a link in the name Macroverse, or is there not really?
Funnily enough, we came up with the name Macroverse before we had focused on the idea of a metaverse.
I thought so, yeah.
Yeah, so the company has been around for 3 years now, and we kind of ran into all this stuff 2 years ago. So it was just a lucky accident. Maybe it was serendipitous, but yes.
Okay, yeah, because you said, I thought maybe you change the name, but okay, metaverse, it's for me, it's something, a real interesting concept in Web3, but another one is NFTs. And I think that's something that you really are using, NFTs. So can you tell us a bit how you are using NFTs for Macroverse, and how you see the future, the next few years for NFTs?
For NFTs, it's obviously I think the explosion of interest around NFTs, it's so much of it last year, especially, and in 2001, even before that, was kind of hype cycle and excitement and this idea of quick money, which was, hopefully we've got away from that and we've got more into the utility of what these things can actually be. I think we think about using NFTs in a fandom and in entertainment, especially, really as part of a kind of a participation spectrum, is how we think of it and how we approach it. So, there's the vast majority of people are happy to have their Netflix subscription, they watch their shows, they love it, great, they're happy to do that. We all have, 28 of these things now, it's fine. But there are always then going to be some people like, wait, I'm a huge fan of this show. I love this thing. I love what these creators are doing. If there is a way for me to interact more deeply with those creators, to get experiences that only I get if I'm a part of this kind of, this community that is a fan base of this. You see it in Web2, you see it in entertainment already with these little kind of fan clubs that pop up around different projects and different stories and different shows and movies and whatever. But I think NFTs and by extension the kind of Web3 application of those can really focus those communities into these very tight-knit, exciting places that hopefully then the creators can go and be involved with directly. And I think the final extension of that is if you kind of viewership on one end and it's ownership and engagement in the middle, and then you have the kind of creativity on the other side of that. I think then you have the situation, what we've been doing with our own community and with Bushido's, what I think you're seeing with kind of Dan Harmon and Crepopolis and some of the other things that have been going on. Bands, the thrash metal band Avenged Sevenfold has this fanatical kind of NFT based fan club that they do unique things for. So I think you'll then get on the other end people who want to be contributing to the stories and to the characters, and they'll be pitching ideas, and they'll want to engage on that level. And I think the kind of enthusiasm that brings, there's the concept of the kind of 1,000 true fans. I don't think I think that's a little small for this space, but that concept I think is hugely valuable, because I think that will ultimately drive massive attention to other entertainment. And I think you're seeing in entertainment as a whole with the explosion of streaming and then the streaming wars, and it was all about just who can put out the most content as quickly as possible and massive amounts of money being spent, and how do you just content will drive eyeballs. There's now been a realization that doesn't work, and there's a ton of now library content, and you see what's happening at Warner Brothers and HBO, and you see what's happening at Netflix. And this retrenchment now into, I think, more where it'll ultimately end up will be these fewer but more concentrated fandoms around certain shows and certain properties that they can then develop and dig into and give access to the special things and really kind of create little mini cultures around these smaller communities, but which will actually ultimately drive more attention, more loyalty, and obviously for these big companies that means more profit.
Wow. But I see, because we are on video, I see you speaking. You really speak with a lot of passion, and you have I see you are a really creative person. And then I'm wondering, because I had also this in the past. I had a tech company, tech consulting, and then I went into marketing. I'm like a bit in the middle, left, right brained. I think I'm in the middle, but I think it can be challenging. Of course, you have the other co-founders or partners. If you want to, you want to run your company, which is business, and then you want to be creative and you want to create stuff. So how do you balance those two sides of your role, I would say?
Balance those things. It's a great question. I would love to know as someone that operates in a similar kind of left brain, right brain space, I'd love to know your thoughts on this too. But it's for me, it really comes down to, I think there are some kind of, the I think fairly classic kind of time management and business training techniques of, great, every night before I go to bed, I sit and I plan my next day's schedule, and I'm looking a week ahead obviously as well, but very specifically it's like, okay, what's coming? What are my meetings around those? What am I doing? What do I need to get done? Prioritizing what has to happen versus what I want to do. So I think that's hugely important for me. And then I do the same thing at the beginning of each week, looking ahead at the week. So I have that kind of long-term business concept of what's coming up business-wise and meetings and those things. And then for me, it's the early morning of my creative time. So I have a very kind of set routine where I'm up at 6 and I meditate for 15 minutes. And then I come down, my son gets on, I make my son breakfast. He gets on a bus at 6:45. By that time, I've made myself coffee and it's in my hot mug, and I jump on the stationary bike for 15 minutes just so I get some energy. And then I sit and I write for 15 minutes, for an hour and a half, I'm sorry. So my writing time is that first hour and a half every day. I don't let myself read emails before then. I don't let
Yeah.
myself go online. I don't look at the news. Like, I just try and isolate myself completely. The one thing I'll do if I'm on the bike is I'll watch, if it's an episode of a TV show or it's something that I'm working on that I feel like I could be inspired by. It's like at the moment I'm, just in a rewrite process on an animated
Right.
comedy. So I've been watching lots of really good animated shows. They're 20 minutes, so they fit roughly into that 15 minutes on the bike. So I'll use that time just to kind of glean whatever insights and how are they structuring and what are they doing, blah, blah, blah. And then I sit and I switch everything off and I put my computer on airplane mode and I write for an hour and a half. And at that point, after I've done that, and sometimes I write 5 pages in that time, and sometimes I write one, but at least I've got that concentrated kind of, creative work done. And then it's like, great. Then I get up and I walk my dog and I stretch, and then I'm into, great, what's the meetings? What's the other work? What's the plans? What's the proposals I have to do? All that other fun business building stuff that I enjoy, but for me, it feels so much better having knowing that I've done my creative work first, as opposed to it's late in the day and now I'm tired and I'm stressed because I've got these emails that I need to respond to, and then suddenly you're not in the mind space to be creative in the right way, if that makes sense.
I like that because, I'm also into, efficiency, effectivity, see how I can do my stuff. By the way, my company name is Efficado. That's because of that. But, a lot of people say, first do those things that you don't like so that
Right.
it's done. And then but I like your approach because I do the same. I don't read my emails. I don't let anything happen. Come to me because those are other people's priorities that come to you and you're not doing your step that you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, but you do it. You do your creative work. You like it, and then you let it up. Then you have done this, which is like the quadrant of important. You have important urge. The Eisenhower matrix. So I like the fact that you, as a creative person, also use these tools because I needed to do the same thing because I'm like I needed to lead a company, but I wanted to be creative. And in the beginning, I let the creativity over to other people. But then I felt like, when I started my new biz, that okay, this is something I really like to do. Okay,
Right.
it's a different business. It's
Yes.
building. It's following a path that's not logical because now I'm looking at Web3, and it's still as you build something new instead of doing like regular traditional stuff. So no,
Yep.
I feel happier by doing this. And actually, yeah, then we need a structure. And I like the fact that you have been thought about that and that you have this structure.
Oh yeah. Well, and also I'm sure you find this, because I do find that then doing some of the work that I love also then feeds doing the work that I have to do. As you know what I mean? I find that the one feeds the other nicely. And I think if you didn't have one or the other, then that being off balance in the other area would potentially be
Exactly. For me, it's about just blocking time and protecting time and just
Yes.
trying to do this. And that's, today I had to do some administration, which I don't like, but sometimes you need really to do this. So I like creating content for you. You like writing. I like talking. I like, doing my podcast. It gives me energy. It doesn't take me energy, even if it's evening. So yeah, you never know where these podcast conversations go to.
Right.
So yeah, we were talking about Web3. But okay, let's go a bit back to what you are doing with Macroverse. So, okay, you founded a company, but then you want to stand out, of course, in the landscape. So you need to do marketing. So can you share a bit how you try to create awareness, how you try to stand out with Macroverse?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, it's still, it's still the final nut that we're cracking as far as being well known. So we're very much still in that building process. What we have found is, I think as difficult as last year was, and the kind of just how many people got chewed up and spat out by all the scandals and all the stuff that affected the industry last year. I think those projects that stuck around and were able to kind of survive are now getting more attention because of that. And so we started with the Web2 business. We started with very much the traditional web marketing, and it was Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all those things. We had the benefit because we're working with other creators that have their own fan bases. We're able to partner with them, and then the fact that they're releasing stuff through us generates a certain attention as well. So that can become its own kind of virtuous circle, which is very nice. And then because of the comics background and because we had, I think, the benefit of having real world experience in entertainment, in comics, in media, producing stuff, I think that was what separated us out of the gates from a lot of companies that, shall we say, aspired to do that, or the fact that the other Web3 and media companies certainly were looking at building an entertainment studio, but they weren't looking at just getting into production on stuff in the same way. So for us, again, the fact that we're like, great, we can turn around and now there are comic pages coming out and there are these things and we're in the community and we're getting involved and we're demonstrating progress quickly. I think a lot of projects they kind of wither on the vine because they have great plans and they may be a year, but it takes a year, 9 months to a year to build a game. So if the company, they sell NFTs at the beginning around a year's plan, people are bored by the time that's done. They've forgotten about it, may have moved on, and suddenly they may have a great game, but now they're struggling to redo stuff. Whereas I think, it's the impatience of the space to some degree, but I think the fact that we can show results kind of quickly and get people involved quickly has been hugely powerful for that.
Yeah, that seems not to be a lot of patience because everything goes really fast, in Web3. I like also the fact that you take, your experience, your past, and then, adapt this and then use Web3 to make it better. Like I actually did the same. I had this business analytics company. So I know a bit about analytics at an investment club. So these things come together with marketing for me in Web3. So I can use this to, help businesses, but then Web3 is new. Nobody has a lot of experience, but I have my background, like you have your background. So that's also interesting when you need to talk to people. And then I think it's good that you have like already these creators and this community, because there are still a lot of people that thought that, that's a Web3. What is this? Should we do this? You talked about these scams.
Yeah.
So just tell me about that, how you handle that.
I mean, I felt like that was the first half of the year that when we kind of got into Web3 as it kicked off, and it's, to me, the answer is always about context, right? So it's, for the people that are saying, well, Web3 is a scam and cryptocurrency is a scam and what is the digital collectability and all those things, and it's like, yes, there are lots of scams in this space. I'm not denying that. And there's anytime I think you have the allure of easy money, you'll get good people who don't know what they're doing, and you'll get crooks coming in to take advantage of the good people, attracted that space in a second, right? However, in the context of the world, cash is still king in terms of criminal enterprise, right? That is still the thing criminals value the most. The casinos, Las Vegas was formed in order to launder money for the mob on the East Coast, right? That was why gambling was pushed through and became legalized. And then you look at the other end. I mean, you look at Enron and you look at the telecoms and all these enormous the U.S. banks are doing to people. I mean, these are cons and scams on a global multi-$100 billion level, but you don't question. So you can criticize the scam, and you should do, and that should always be called out. But no one argues that we don't need banks, and no one argues we don't need cash. And I think that's where there has been just a double standard for me with this. And so I think that's the first thing I point out. And the second thing is, look, we're out to build the people that know us. We're not anonymous. We're very front facing. Our names are out there. We're not trying to hide who we are. We're not trying to. So I think it becomes much easier in a world where you can be anonymous. One has to be much more careful. But you know where to find me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have no incentive. I'm not incentivized to con anybody.
Exactly, but this is a trend can sometimes be, too far. For instance, if you have your community on Discord, but you are approached by people, even if they have, like a good idea or good purpose, and they just want to ask a question, but you don't see who they are, it's not a real name.
Yeah.
It feels a bit awkward. So like it's still good, to have a bit of I would say identity that
Yes.
that you really exist, that it's really you, the person that we're talking to, because these days there are so many scams. It's so
Exactly.
many, imposters that copy people's IDs. So
Yeah.
it's but I guess if it's Web3 or Web2 or whatever, you go everywhere, you need to be careful.
That's the thing, I think, and I think ultimately what I hope is, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this too. What I hope is that some of the identifying and identifiable aspects of Web3. So the fact that you can directly control your digital identity in a unique way. Yes, if someone cracks that, you're in trouble, but you are in trouble if someone sweeps your social security number from a data sweep as well. Like that happens all
Yeah.
the time. But I think being able to own your identity online in the ways that blockchain and Web3 allows, I think hopefully, well, short term, we're running into these issues. Hopefully, in the next 3 to 5 years, actually, that some of those concerns will be handled by the tech as it evolves. And I don't know if
Yeah.
you're seeing that in your own life.
Yeah, this aspect of digital identity, when I help people to onboard on Web3, then, there are lots of people are, experienced entrepreneurs or marketers. And now at this moment, actually, I'm launching a mastermind to get people in the mastermind and help them to use Web3 for their business. But first they need to onboard. And what are the first thing that we need to onboard people? For me, it's that they need to have their wallet, because if you don't have a wallet,
Uh-huh.
and then for me, it's important they get an identity. And I had, I have good connections with Unstoppable Domains. Sandy Carter was on my podcast episode some time ago. And I'm really into that, so that people have their unique
Yeah.
identity, use it, start from there, so that the fundamentals are good before they start, to go further. So we could talk for hours about digital identity, but it's really, if you haven't listened to it, check out the podcast episode
Thank
with
you.
Sandy
I
Carter.
haven't though. I didn't go back that far. I will do because no, I love Unstoppable
That
Domains.
and a lot of people. I've been asking this question a lot of times, digital identity, because it's really, for me, something that's really important.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
also something I wanted to ask you is about, are there some interesting, exciting, upcoming projects or initiatives that Macroverse has in the works that you like to share?
Thank you. Oh, yeah, yes, of course. I mean, very directly, we'll be doing our first big drop of comics, of NFT comics, uniquely formatted for the web. We've got 5 different projects coming out. So we've got an array, everything from kind of YA, very lyrical, kind of Miyazaki-esque stories, fantasy, up to kind of hard R-rated black and white film noir horror. A project called Darkland that we just released. We're kind of releasing on our app now. It's also available on Webtoons. That's a kind of Game of Thrones. It's a black comedy, so it's kind of Game of Thrones meets Veep, but set in hell. Very, very funny, very raw. It'll definitely trigger some people, that one especially. And then a series called Hex 11 with a fantastic creative team here in California. All-female creative team about a young witch in a world where magic is discovered as a new technology, and so you can kind of purchase magical abilities, but then there are native magic users as well, and the kind of conflict between those two things. So the corporate greed versus individual ability. And then Bushido's, so this series that we did with the Bushido's community. So there'll be those kind of 5 different projects that we're releasing. There are fantastic artists we've got involved in there. We'll have 5 different rarity tiers in each of the projects. So there'll be the majority be kind of one cover and one look, and then there'll be a more limited number, which is a different cover and black and white art or whatever that might be, and then we all the way up through a one of one cover by a known crypto artist, a known Web3 artist. And so it is, there'll be 1,000 of each of them available, but there is this chance in there with this rarity with, of rolling the dice and getting something kind of great out of it. And what's fun is the stories are good and fantastic anyway. So I think what we're excited about is the opportunity to get kind of beyond the JPEG. It's beyond the PFP. It's even beyond the ticket. It's like, great, here is this experience that you are purchasing with this cool collectability aspect and with these traits that are rare, and add rarity to it, and hopefully then add value to it, as one does in any comic book shop, right? You're looking for that special gold foil cover. It's like, great, we've kind of mimicked that as far as we can in the digital space. So, and that'll be the first kind of, there have been other comic drops out there, but they've all been essentially you're buying an access to a PDF. That's all that is. Whereas we've really like redesigned the whole experience to feel very digitally native, to feel like it's something that belongs online. And then that's a precursor. We'll be doing print versions as well. And because we can be adding things to this first drop. And so we'll be following those up with more character drops around these worlds, so people can then pitch stories back into them. So we're trying to, creating this whole ecosystem around these series that we're launching, which is really kind of fun, which is really exciting. And then we have another one that we do have a little kind of something fun coming up for, is a series called Sal Bones, which was based on the PFP collection Deadheads. It was a friend of ours from Bennett Phillips, actually, from Unstoppable Domains.
Okay.
He is the biggest collector of deadheads in the space, and he had this really cool one, this kind of mafioso-looking one, and he had this idea around it. And so we partnered with him, and so we've got some fun stuff coming up, specifically about Sal Bones' project, about the Deadheads spinoff, which would be cool. So yeah, and then 4 or 5 other drops planned for the rest of the year. So we've got a lot in the pipeline. Which is
a lot going on. No, if there are already some links that you like to share with my audience, be sure to send them after the podcast episode recording is done. I will put them in the show notes. So guys, if you are now listening, every time I have a podcast article linked to the podcast episode, and also the show notes where you can find all the links.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. That's great. I'll also include we'll include like a free month subscription to our app as well. So anyone wants to go check it out, they can, download it, jump in there, poke around. If you love it, great, stick around. If you don't, I hope you enjoy a month. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks for doing that. It's great.
Yeah, you will find this under the resources type subtitle in the show notes. We have also the connect subtitle in the show notes. So Adam, if people want to connect with you, what would be the best place where you would like to send them?
Best thing for us is Macroverse HQ pretty much everywhere. So we're on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, we're just, that's the place to find us. And then, if you want to get in touch with us directly, there are links in all those places. You can email us directly if you've got any questions or ideas or whatever. And then our Discord is discord.gg/Macroverse. So nice and easy to find as well.
Awesome. All the links will be in the show notes. Amazing, all the things you have going on. Adam, I'm sure that people that are now listening want to learn more, so they can check it out. Thanks so much. It was an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. Like you said, I feel like we could have kept talking for a long time about all sorts of interesting things. I really appreciate it, Yuri. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, this is always the case with my guests, and we will see what happens. Maybe there will be a guest like you coming back in the future, and there are new stories to share. I like to keep my podcast episodes like around 30 minutes. That's what people like. So guys, again, an amazing episode. If you like to know more, just follow my podcast, CMO Stories, hit the subscribe button. If you like this episode with Adam and you think this is really interesting for people around me, be sure to share this episode with them. And of course, I would like to see you back for the next podcast episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.